Have you ever heard of the term rumination? This is a term that I became familiar with about a year ago, this time in fact. And the way that I became familiar with this term, I think I heard the word before, but the way I became familiar with it as a subject and diving a little bit deeper on it was last year this time I was dealing with some things mentally, where I was just kind of going around in my head about, some things. And I'm naturally a problem solver. So I naturally go around in my head about different things, whether it's like, thinking about new ideas for my life or for my business, or whether it's, coming up with some new creative thought or ideas. So I'm always going around in my head about something. But last year, this time, I was going around in my head about some life circumstances that I really couldn't do anything about, and that I just had to deal with it. It's just what it was. And so naturally, morning, John. How's it going, bro? Looking forward to seeing you in a few minutes. Naturally, as a problem solver, I was going around in my head about some things. But with these issues, I couldn't necessarily solve them, so I noticed them having a negative effect on me in the long run. They were affecting me day in and day out. I was staying in this place for hours, and I didn't have any issue with it because this was what I was used to doing. I'm a very analytical person. But it didn't feel good, and I noticed, or one day I stumbled across an article, a psychology article, and I forgot what it's called. I'm going to dig it up and find it so that I could share it in this way as well. But when I found this article, it was talking about going around in your head about things and overanalyzing. And I realized in that moment that that's what I was doing. I was going around in my head about something that I wasn't getting closer to a solution. And although I was getting deeper and deeper in thought and deeper in the feelings that came along with those thoughts, and those emotions were very stressful and very anxiety producing. So when I read this article, it was around the time where shortly afterwards I started a self-care journey that you all have seen me do if you follow me on a regular basis. And that meditation and mindfulness journey changed everything for me. So I'm actually doing this video today to talk about the subject, as a year later I'm working with myself with some things emotionally, and I'm revisiting the subject to dive deeper as well as to share. So I decided to pull up an article that I was reading and do an article response on it so that we could share and talk about rumination and how to deal with it. So this article is called 10 Tips to Help You Stop Ruminating. And I'm actually going to put the article in the chat right now. If you're watching live on Facebook, I'm going to pin it to the chat. And if you're watching afterwards on YouTube, then you can look for it in the description. 10 tips to help you stop ruminating. First of all, what is rumination? And originally this word comes from the action of a cow chewing their cud over and over and over. But then when we start talking about it from a psychological perspective, rumination is something that takes on the same form, but in a slightly different manner, dealing with chewing out thoughts over and over again. What is rumination? Has your head ever been filled with one single thought or a string of thoughts that just keep you repeating and repeating and repeating, and they keep repeating themselves? The process of continually thinking about the same thoughts, which tend to be sad or dark, is called rumination. A habit of rumination can be dangerous to your mental health, as it can prolong or intensify depression, as well as impair your ability to think and process emotions. It may also cause you to feel isolated and can, in reality, push people away. I'm a person who, again, I'm a problem solver, so a lot of times when I'm ruminating about something, it's not necessarily sad or dark. So it's helpful. I'm not actually ruminating. As I was watching another video, I'm deconstructing, a scenario in order to figure it out or put it back together or go somewhere with it. And that's really helpful with positive things. But when you have that same mind about negative things that are sad or dark, it's called rumination. What causes ruminating? People ruminate for a variety of reasons. According to the American Psychological Association, some common reasons for rumination include belief that by ruminating, you'll gain insight into your life or problem. That's definitely me. And that's why I was glad that after reading that article, I caught it. I was like, oh, wow, that is what I'm doing. I thought I was doing something in a positive way to look for a solution. What I'm really doing is just going around in my head about something that I can't change, that's tough to deal with, and it's hurting me worse just thinking about it. And then you also start to use your imagination to come up with things to add to the equation. That's not even the case. And then you start ruminating about that. It really goes deep. And another thing I was doing was what I call rehearsing negative outcomes. I was ruminating in that way too. I was thinking about a scenario situation, knowing how it would go down, knowing that the outcome would be something that was different than what I desired. And, with that, I was rehearsing a negative outcome, and I kept feeling the emotion each time as if I was there going through it in the scenario that I was thinking about. So one is belief by ruminating that you'll gain insight into your life or a problem. The second is having a history of emotional or physical trauma that can play back in your mind and make you ruminate too. Facing ongoing stressors that can't be controlled. And so even as I do this video now, it's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, in order to revisit and work with myself on some things. Ruminating is also common in people who possess certain personality characteristics, which include perfectionism, neuroticism, and excessive focus on one's relationship with others. Once again, this guy. All three of those things. Even though I'm not over the top with it, but at the same time is why it's something I have to be mindful of. You might have a tendency to overvalue your relationship with others so much that you'll make large personal sacrifices to maintain your relationships, even if they're not working for you. Tips for addressing ruminating thoughts. Once you get stuck in a ruminating thought cycle, it can be hard to get out of it. If you do enter a cycle of such thoughts, it is important to stop them as quickly as possible to prevent them from becoming more intense. And I've gotten so much better than that with that. Coming from reading that first article, the first thing I learned was signs that I was ruminating, because it felt so similar to constructive thinking or deconstructive thinking, in a positive way. I wasn't aware. When I became aware, then I had to start making a mental note of myself. To myself, and now I still do it. When I know I'm ruminating, I have like a little bit of an anchor or a little bit of a thing that I do that resets my mind and allows me to snap out of it. And the first thing is just, oh shit, here we go again. And then from there, following that up with some activities. Speaking of which, this video is actually part of that activity. I was ruminating this morning, feeling it coming on. I needed to do something to get my head out of it. And I was like, oh, what better activity to apply getting out of rumination than to do an article response on rumination. So once you get stuck, it can be hard to get out of it. If you do enter a cycle of such thoughts, it's important to stop them as quickly as possible to prevent them from becoming more intense. As when a ball is rolling downhill, it's easier to stop the ruminating thoughts when they first start rolling and have less speed than when they've gathered speed over time. So, what can you do to stop these obsessive thoughts from running through your mind and from ruining your life? That's me adding that on to with the article. Here are 10 tips to try when you begin to experience the same thought or set of thoughts swirling around your head. Now, one thing I want to do as I read these 10 tips is I want to give a first tip that's not on this list, so it's going to equal 11. But this, I think, it's small, but it's huge. It's one of those nuanced but huge things. I was listening to a video, and one of the first things that this particular doctor said was that the first step to dealing with rumination was to make a commitment to deal with your rumination. And I mean, I listened to that video maybe 3 times. I listened maybe 4 times. The first 2 times, I was just like, yeah, of course. Third time, I was like, why would he put that first? I mean, that's pretty obvious. Then the 4th time, I was like, oh, I think I get it. So making a commitment has to be the first step, because what I realize is the rumination that I deal with, to some extent, if I don't watch it, I don't mind going down that path with certain things. Now, not everything feels good. I mean, all of it feels bad, but some of it, though, maybe because of a particular thing that I desire, I'll go down that path because I'm experiencing or exploring thoughts and feelings that I actually desire to experience in relation to the negative feelings that I don't want to experience. So I realized making a commitment to stop the rumination is important, because if not, then you'll actually do it. You'll be okay with it because you are trying to figure it out. You do want things to be a different way, so you're trying to explore it to see if they're different. But the truth of the matter is, in these scenarios, when it's not better, or it's not going to be better, or it's not going to go in a particular direction, no matter how much you think about it, then you have to actually make a commitment to not go down that path. But going down that path, or not going down that path, may mean leaving something behind that you actually don't want to leave behind, and hence the reason for your rumination, even though it's affecting you negatively. And so I realized that on that 4th time listening through, I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, it is important to make a commitment, like an intentional commitment, because otherwise with certain ruminating thoughts, you won't mind going down that path. It won't feel good, but, All right, so according to this article, past that, the first thing that they have here is to distract yourself. When you realize you're starting to ruminate, finding a distraction can break through your cycle. Can break your thought cycle. Look around you, quickly choose something else to do, and don't give it a second thought. Consider calling a friend or family member, doing chores around your house, watching a movie, drawing a picture, reading a book, walking around your neighborhood, doing a video to help other people with rumination while you're helping yourself with rumination. Play some music, got my keyboard in the background. There are so many things that you can do that are in your interest, or things that you would like to do to be healthy distractions to yourself. One of the doctors that I listened to, he basically said, I forgot how he put it, it was so eloquent, but in a nutshell, it was just like, isolation breeds this, it adds to it. The biggest key is to get your mind distracted doing something else that is in your best interest. Number 2, plan to take action. Instead of repeating the same negative thought over and over again, take that thought and make a plan to take action to address it. In your head, outline each step you need to take to address the problem, or write it down on a piece of paper. Be as specific as possible and also realistic with your expectations. Doing this will disrupt your rumination. It will also help you move forward in an attempt to get a negative thought out of your head once and for all. I'm a writer. I love writing things down, and so that activity is really helpful, to write it down and to just see what you're looking at. And you can even write, the goals down on paper. That helps to bring it into manifestation, helps you look at it, it cycles back through, it becomes more real. It's one more step or one more moment where you're not thinking about the shit that you've been thinking about. And that's the name of the game. It will disrupt your rumination. Number 3, take action. Once you've outlined a plan of action to address your ruminating thoughts, take one small step to address the issue. Refer to the plan you made to solve the problem you've been obsessing over. Move forward with each step slowly and incrementally until your mind is put at ease. The biggest thing that helps with this, which is what helped me before when I was dealing with it really heavily last year, is mindfulness. And the definition of mindfulness is being totally present in your thoughts and in your feelings without judgment. Really being gentle and easy with yourself about what you're dealing with. And that's important because then the first step is just like, okay, reset. All right, I'm ruminating again. Even just saying that, okay, I'm ruminating again, it's awareness that helps you to get out. And you're going to have to reset a million times depending on what you're ruminating about. That's what I'm working with right now. I'm having to just be really, really gentle with myself and just say, yeah, this is just what it is. So, reset. Okay, I'm doing it again. Reset. Fuck, I'm doing it again. Reset. And it's literally that each time. And not, I like this last step where it said be realistic with your expectations. Because the main thing is, if this is something that impacts you deeply or something that you're connected to in a very deep way, for any reason, job, relationship, it could be your living situation, like anything, then you're not going to get it out of your head overnight. It just doesn't work that way. And so you'll have to be gentle with yourself, and you have to be realistic in your expectations. That the best that you can do, especially in the first stages of this, is to just notice it, point it out, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, so that way you've now taken a moment out of rumination to do something else and to reset. Number 4, question your thoughts. We often ruminate when we think we've made a major mistake or when something traumatic has happened to us that we feel responsible for. If you start ruminating on a troubling thought, try putting your repetitive thought in perspective. Thinking more about how your troubling thought might not be accurate may help you to stop ruminating because you realize the thought makes little sense. That is, this actually came up when I coined this phrase, rehearsing negative outcomes. Because I started realizing, I rehearse different outcomes because in a positive scenario, it's actually good. Like, if I'm thinking about building a business, then rehearsing all the scenarios that things can go could be a constructive way of thinking because I can prepare ahead of time since I don't know what way things will go and since there may be multiple ways that things can go. So that could be very, very helpful. But then when you're rehearsing stuff that either hasn't happened or you have no reason to feel that it will happen or that your thought about it's accurate, it's just you're like, man, this could happen or what if? Then this really helps to question your thoughts and say, wait a minute, okay. This is not real right now, but I'm rehearsing it in my head, and so I'm experiencing the real emotions that I would feel from this. Let me stop doing this. Let me question my thought. This might not even be real. Number 5, readjust your life goals. Perfectionism and unrealistic goal setting can lead to rumination. If you set goals that are unrealistic, you may start to focus on why and how you haven't reached a goal and what you should have done to reach it. Setting more realistic goals you're capable of achieving can reduce the risk of overthinking your own actions. I realized this at least 10 years ago. I think it might even be more like 15. I realized this when I changed my workout goals and my workout schedule because I changed to something that was more realistic with my life activities increasing, especially with my career. And when I did that, I realized this principle right here, setting more realistic goals, it allowed me to feel successful and allowed me not to ruminate in my head about not achieving this other level, Number 6, work on enhancing your self-esteem. Many people who ruminate report difficulties with self-esteem. In fact, lack of self-esteem can be associated with increased rumination. It's also been linked with increased risk of depression. Enhancement of self-esteem can be accomplished in many ways. For instance, building on existing strengths can add to a sense of mastery, which can enhance self-esteem. So this would be, this would be a good place to, with dealing with your rumination, to put some energy, some time, to intentionally set aside time to put into things that you're good at, that you want to go farther with, or things that you want to learn. But in this case, about enhancing self-esteem, you could build on existing strengths so that you can add to your sense of mastery with something, which then increases your self-esteem. Some people may choose to work on the enhancement of self-esteem in psychotherapy. As you enhance your self-esteem, self-efficacy may also be enhanced. You may find that you're better able to control rumination. So for me, I don't deal with a self-esteem issue, but I do understand how this can be applied. And even without me dealing with a self-esteem issue, this point of finding ways to build on existing strengths to add another sense of mastery, or to add a sense of mastery of something, can continue to not only help me out in that area, but it helped me to stay focused on doing something productive so that I'm not lost in my rumination. Number 7, try meditation. This is where I started on my journey with helping myself out with this. Meditating can reduce rumination because it involves clearing your mind to arrive at an emotionally calm state. When you find yourself with a repeating loop of thoughts in your mind, seek out a quiet space, sit down, breathe deeply, and focus on nothing but breathing. This is tip number 7. And the interesting thing about this is that this works like a charm. It can be the hardest thing to do at times. Even though it is one of my number one ways to deal with this. And the main reason why is because when you get into the meditative space of any sort, whether you're in your car meditating, whether you're at home, whatever, when you get into this place and you're focusing on your breathing, at that point, I really feel like your brain is like, finally, we can talk now. You've stopped everything else. Let me holler at you. Let's talk. we can rap about some things now. I really feel like, meditation is one of those times where if you're a busybody like myself, your brain is like, finally, let's chat now. I got you all to myself. And you can find actually that your rumination can be increased. The only good thing about this, where you don't have to worry if that happens, is that meditation and mindfulness is all about observing your feelings and your thoughts and not applying judgment, just being with them, and then slowly but surely or repetitively going to something like breathing, focusing on your breathing, or focusing on the sensation of your body. And every time you get lost, because you will get distracted, realize that you got distracted, using that as a moment, just a realization to reset and then do it again. And your goal is to just continue to do that. It's all about repetition. It's not going to be where you don't have thoughts or you don't get distracted. You just become more used to it, where it just happens less and less naturally because of your practice of allowing yourself to be distracted and being gentle with yourself and bringing yourself back to some other focus. Number 8, understand your triggers. Each time you find yourself ruminating, make a mental note of the situation that you're in. This includes where you are, what time of day it is, who's around you, if anyone, and what you've been doing that day. Developing ways to avoid or manage these triggers can reduce your rumination. I like this tip because it's overlooked. When I think about when I ruminate, and what you may find is that you may find some patterns, some consistent times. I'm up right now, and it's 8:45 Eastern Standard Time. I woke up maybe about an hour ago. And before I went to sleep, I did a meditation, a guided meditation that I was listening to while I was going to sleep so that I could not ruminate and so that I could keep my mind in a particular place, focus on something else. It was very successful. When I woke up, I felt good, but my mind immediately went back to that place again just because it's something that's on my mind. And so with that, good morning, everybody. Good morning who's watching live. With that, I was going to allow myself to go back to sleep, and I listened to another meditation. This meditation that I listened to was about 30 minutes long. And usually I'm able to fall asleep on that, but I couldn't this morning. I was with it, and then my mind was drifting into rumination. Then I was back with it, drifting, back with it, drifting. Now, again, that practice was okay because I was being gentle with myself. I was being patient. I wasn't judging myself. I just allowed it to be and kept noticing it and resetting it. But I also realized there was no way I was going to be able to go back to sleep. It just wasn't possible. So I decided to realize, this is a time when this happens. And then I decided to get up and do an activity that would help to deal with my rumination. Number 9, talking to a friend. Hello, friend. How are you today? Ruminating thoughts can make you feel isolated. Talking about your thoughts with a friend who can offer an outside perspective may help to break the cycle. Be sure to speak with a friend who can give you that perspective rather than ruminate with you. The only other thing I'll say that's good about this as far as talking to someone is that having someone to empathize with you can also really deeply help. Because again, it's taking your mind off of it. It can help you by feeling that sense of not feeling alone and having that interaction, that social interaction, which it really helps with it. As long as they're not a person who is ruminating with you. It's like finding somebody, it's like trying to not gossip, but being around someone who that's all they do. It's just like, yeah. Last but not least, try therapy. If your ruminating thoughts are taking over your life, you may want to consider therapy. And I'll say that all of us need therapy. What you find about therapy is that it's not so much about just dealing with something when you're like, when you're really screwed up. It's like preventative as well. It's like regular maintenance of your mind and being able to just have healthy thoughts and practices from another person. If your ruminating thoughts are taking over your life, you may want to consider therapy. A therapist can help you to identify why you're ruminating and how to address the problems at their core. Lifestyle changes. If you're a long-time ruminator who wants to bring an end to your repetitive negative thoughts, here are some simple changes you can make to your life that can help you to do just that. Be proactive in trying to solve your problems. First, identify your problems in your life and then start taking actions to solve your problems one step at a time. Set your own expectations. Negative ruminating thoughts can creep in when we question our self-worth. Praise yourself for your successes and forgive yourself for your mistakes. Constantly work on building your self-esteem by taking care of yourself and doing things you enjoy and excel at. I'll even add on to that, not only that you enjoy and excel at, but also add on things that you're just generally and genuinely curious about as well. Because I feel like that's another level of helping you with rumination. When you go into this place of imagination with something else that you're curious about. So you're already curious about it. And then if you go explore it, then these are all new thoughts. So they're like 2 steps. They're at least 2 and then more, depending on the subject that you're dealing with, removed from your rumination. They're 2 or 3 steps, 4 or 5 steps outward, depending on something that you're dealing with that's of your curiosity that you want to explore, that you have no idea about, but you've always wanted to know about. So Create a support system. This is the last part here. Having friends and family members, and maybe even a therapist, any of whom you can call call on for help when something goes wrong or when you're having a bad day. These special people may distract you from your ruminating thoughts and are also likely to boost your self-esteem. Okay, I said that was the last part, but here's a closing thought. Is it possible to stop ruminating? If you're a ruminator, it's important to know some tips that may help you to stop your thought cycle in its tracks before it spirals out of control. It's also important to be proactive and take steps to prevent yourself from ruminating in the first place. With awareness and some lifestyle changes, it's possible to free yourself from ruminating thoughts. If you find you're unable to use these tips to help your rumination, you should consider contacting a mental health professional for assistance. And so, these are 10 tips to help you stop ruminating. Again, for me, even in this moment, doing this activity was a part of this whole process. And so I figured, while I'm dealing with this and while I'm moving through it, revisiting some things, learning some new things, just having deeper perspective, then why not also use that as an activity to help others as well in that same vein? And so that's what it is. There's a small but huge difference between rumination and between constructive, deep, analytical thinking. And so I would honestly say probably one of the biggest factors is like, how do you feel? That's one of the biggest things I've learned coming through this is like, when I'm going through my head with something and I don't even realize I'm ruminating, if I am in touch with, wait a minute, how does this make me feel? If it makes me feel really bad and sad and I haven't gotten any closer to a solution, I'm ruminating. So that is that. I would love for you to drop a line, drop your comments, drop your thoughts. Tell me about your experience with rumination. How are you dealing with it? And yeah, let's continue to support each other in working with this. Because again, that's a part of the activity, talking to friends. So on that tip, I appreciate you all for hanging out with me for this self-care topic. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Until then, stop ruminating. Take care, everybody. Peace.